corners of perception and see more than you've been told is there, then you start to incorporate a bigger field of awareness. And this is what artists, again, have always done. Poets have always made people more aware. Musicians, dancers, singers, writers. The idea is to make people more aware of what they originally have been programmed and conditioned and brainwashed to think is all of reality.
Hi, my name is Zenka Caro, and I'm founder of LightNet, and my passion and purpose is removing impossible from the dictionary. Today, we are joined by a dear friend of mine, Alan Steinfeld. I love his energy, his curiosity, and his leadership in this idea of new realities. At one point in the interview, he says that as much as we see in the outside world and how vast it is equally vast inside. And he talks about accessing the creativity and the knowledge of the world by really going into new ways of understanding how this all works. In this interview, he talks about the many interviews that he has done over the years since the 1980s. He talks about doing interviews with people like John Mack, Andy Warhol, Nassim Haramein over the years. And he talks about how all of these people are helping us take that next step in our own evolution. Enjoy the interview.
Bye. What did I discover my purpose and passion to be in? I think what excites me the most is to open people up to new perceptions, like to see the world a little differently than what their ordinary programming, cultural conditioning. We're so conditioned to see the world through this very small frame. And I like to open that frame a little more to show people a bigger reality. That's why I call my show, my passion, New Realities, because when you start to see a little more of what's possible, you have new ideas. New things open up for people in their lives to create more magic, more of their passion, more of their expansion for other people. So that's my most exciting thing to do, is the ability to show people there's more to reality than what they thought. You know, it was a slow dawning. It was a dawn where the sun was slowly rising, but I think it started when I switched in college from psychology to English literature. I took psychology because I said, oh yeah, I want to understand people and all that. My uncle was a kind of sort of well-known psychologist. He was looking at perception too. That kind of opened me up. And I wanted to take psychology to understand a little bit more. But then all these awful, boring statistics, all these case studies, and I took one literature course in college, and it's like, wow, these writers understood what human passion and desire and intent were all about. And I went deeper into literature. I read Shakespeare. It's like, this guy really understood the motivations of people, way beyond anything I ever read in any psychology book. And then I took a year of James Joyce, where Joyce was writing in a stream of consciousness, at least in his book Ulysses, which was his first major classic. I mean, he had written other, but Ulysses was stream of consciousness. You're inside other people's heads, seeing and thinking what they're thinking. And I said, wow, I'm like being that person and seeing their reality, and then seeing their discoveries of a reality as they're having experience. So we all have experiences, but the focus of your consciousness limits your experience. So I discovered with stream of consciousness, experience doesn't have to be put into a box. It's not like anything. There might be unnameable identifications of certain experiences that are beyond what culture is telling you is possible. And then, of course, that got me into the whole UFO thing. Really? Then what is these other things out there that no one can explain? So it was kind of a slow dawning, because getting back to when it dawned on me, the UFO phenomena, and whatever that is, because we don't know what that is. It's something is out there, represents a challenge to everything we think is possible in reality. There are no rules, and we're trying to put into a box of the known, and it's totally outside the box. And this is what scientists and politicians and media, they want everything in a little box. So the role of the UFOs, and I have to say the role of the artist, it's him or herself, is to stretch the boundaries of the possible into the unknown, infinite, impossible. So I know it's a little rambling, but that's sort of like, it ties my fascination of consciousness with UFOs into the creative imagination, which is unlimited. So by showing people more or increased parameters to their reality, they increase their potential, their creative potential, to then activate something to show others, look, there is more to reality. So when you're looking at a painting or something, you're actually looking at a window inside the possible that some people haven't considered before. So Marshall McLuhan said the artist is looking out the front window of the car, and everyone's looking at where they came from, behind them. And the role of the artist is to look out and see the new. Picasso said, if it's known, it's already old. So we have to keep pushing the envelope of the new and the impossible, because that's the only way the world can change. It's up to the artist. So that's my kind of follow through from the nature of reality perception to those pushing the boundaries of perception into new realities. There's nothing to fear about the unknown, because what people fear about the unknown is their projection of the known onto something else. Because the unknown is only full of possibilities and things you have yet to discover. There's nothing to fear about the unknown. All that is just human thought, anxiety, projection. That's not real. It's not real. When you meet the unknown, it's full of infinite potential. That's the gift of human consciousness as it interfaces with 3 or 4D reality, is to make known the unknown. That's what my teacher, Ramtha, said. He said, we're here for really one reason, to make known the unknown, pushing the envelopes of creation into something that is yet to come into form, so other people can, this is my extension of that, other people can enjoy your creation and by extension add to that creation. So we're here as creators to emulate creation in the act of creativity. That's what photographers do. It's like, oh, no one's seen this little thing, I can capture that. Or painters, or it's all the imagination. And William Blake said the imagination is the true human being. So we're not here to have a job or to even have relations or families, or all that happens. All that stuff happens. Our real gift of incarnation is to create something from your pure imagination that everyone will say, wow, that's something new. That's something I haven't thought of. That adds to the evolution of culture, consciousness, and human potential. Your gifts, and everyone has their own gifts, is to add and to increase, like what some people call the fingertips of God. You're stretching out and touching more. You're making something known that is yet to come into view. And then by your actions, you're bringing, I don't want to say new realities again, but you're bringing this incredible new world into the human awareness. I have to say where it started, this quest for new reality, it started, I was really a hyperactive child. I couldn't sit still. I was always shaking my leg. I could never fall asleep at night. I was, when you're 2 or 3 years old, your parents like to put you in bed before it's dark. I thought, that is crazy. I'm not going to sleep before it's dark. So I couldn't fall asleep because I had so much energy. So what I did was close my eyes and just go within. I started to see like white light. It was like meditation at 2 or 3 years old. I didn't even know what I was doing, but I was focusing inward somehow. I just did it because I discovered sort of at a young age, there's just as much inside of you as there is outside of you. The personality is just like this thin line between the inner and the outer, but it's infinite on both sides of that line. I mean, it just has to be somehow. I mean, I can't explain that, but it just seemed obvious. Wow. And to discover, wow, there's this infinite aspect of the mind as much as there's this infinite aspect of the world. It's like, I didn't know how that was possible. I couldn't explain it. I just sort of understood that somehow. That somehow we were infinite in inner and outer. And I wanted to explore that. Not just with literature, but then I didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated as an English literature major. But I came to New York and worked in film. And then a friend of mine had this interview show on public access, and he wasn't asking the questions I would ask. So I knew I could do good interview because I'm curious. It's like, where'd my curiosity end up is finding out, tell me what you know. Tell me what I can learn from you. So, my show's not about disagreeing, it's about learning from me. When I interview people, it's like, I want to know the universe that exists inside you. What do you have a peek into that can increase my perceptions, my awareness? So, I've done my New Realities interview show since the 90s, I guess 30 years. First on public access, and then when YouTube started, I was one of the first to have all this creator content and got a creator's, whatever that was. I was creator on YouTube 2006, and then, YouTube was bought by Google, but I'm still doing that. So that curiosity led me to people that I knew were original thinkers. Like when I first read an article by Bruce Lipton in a little paper up in Washington State, I said, I got to talk to this guy. So I sought him out, and before he had published any books or anything, and he sat with me for 3 hours going over his whole thesis of the cells are an aspect of creation and the infinite. So it's like it fit in, but it fit into what I was thinking, but it also brought me into understanding biology in a whole new kind of spiritual way. And other original thinkers, like I met Alex Gray, said, when I first saw Alex Gray's paintings, it was at a gallery, it was called the New Museum in New York City. And before I went in there, I wanted to see what a picture of ascension was, because I had been reading about this, and and ascension was the body transforming into light. So I asked, it's kind of in my own mind, give me a vision of ascension. I walk into the museum and boom, there's the painting of the physical body turning into light. And I said, oh my God, that's exactly what I asked for. I thought it would be a vision of this, but it shows up how it shows up. And it's like, wow, that's the vision I asked for. And so that cued me into Alex Gray's work, and I said, well, this guy's a visionary. And then, we became friends, and I've gone up to that Chapel of Sacred Mirrors up in upstate New York and done lectures there on UFOs, all that. So, when I met Nassim Haramein for the first time, and he talked about there's a black hole nested in everything from atoms to molecules to cells to the human heart to suns to galaxies to maybe even, the universe itself. I said, that's an original thinker there. That's exciting. When I saw him out and said, let's do an interview, and he talked about time travel and making anti-gravity devices out of black hole physics. And those people are still exciting for me to talk to. Who else? Like Lynn McTaggart, when she wrote the book The Field, she kind of put the understanding of the quantum field on the map. Or talking to Hal Puthoff about remote viewing and Who else are really people that stand? Even JJ and Desiree Hertog, when I found out JJ had left the planet for 3 days with his body and went to these higher levels of consciousness, I wanted to know everything he had to say. So there's remarkable people on this planet, have so much to share, and I'm really interested in sharing what they have to share and giving them a voice for other people to be influenced by their new reality they've discovered. And there's so much to be discovered. What's his name? David Hawkins, another brilliant mind that I had the opportunity to sit down with and talk to me about his cosmology, his understanding. And there's more and more. I mean, we're only on a very small island of the known, sitting in an infinite sea of the unknown. I graduated college, went to New York City, got this really cheap apartment there. And me and my college roommate moved in. We were paying $90 a month, each of us. So, and that was still, it was maybe not a challenge, but it was like, gave me the opportunity to live in New York and walk out on the street and say, okay, what adventure can we happen today? Who am I going to meet? You know, running into Allen Ginsberg or William Burroughs or Gregory Corso or Harry Smith, if you know who Harry Smith was. These are like, you know, in these villages were like, you know, the locals, and it's like, oh, or, you know, going to some wild bar where there were transvestites dancing. This was the Pyramid Club. It's like, you know, I never saw transvestites. And then it's like, oh, okay, that's fine, you know. Actually, seeing transvestites made me go to accept channeling a little bit. Well, these people think they're that, and these people are channeling this. It's not that much of a stretch to see that. Well, so then I saw these channels. So, but there were times when, you know, I would have freelance jobs and all that, and even $90 was, well, that wasn't that too much. But then, you know, my roommate moved out and then all that. So, but for a long time, it was just like adventures, like every day. It was the opportunities that presented, you know, as a creative capital, world capital, people would go there to be creative and go into art galleries or museums or get parties or meeting people like Nina Hagen or who else? Lots. Andy Warhol, another character. You know, he once said to me, "What's the secret to immortality?" I said, "Andy, you have to take care of yourself." That's why. You know, but there were a lot of creative people in New York in the 80s and the 90s. You know, meeting John Mack. When I met John Mack, it's like, wow, this guy has a whole new view of what alien contact is. I mean, he was a Harvard psychiatrist, and he was challenged, are these people crazy, or are they having a real experience? He says, and I heard him say this personally, and, you know, I knew him, he said, according to his expertise in psychiatry, these people are having real experiences. So John Mack really qualified the abduction, the contact experience as real. These people are having something happen to them. They're experiencing trauma. Something's going on there. And so he was a huge factor in where we are today in shifting from an acceptance of people's experience, you know. And my uncle, who I mentioned earlier, who had knew of R.D. Laing. R.D. Laing wrote the book called Knots and personal, and what is it, the politics of personal experience, where if you're having an experience, I can't argue with that. That is your experience. I may not believe you, but it's your experience. So he would sometimes work with schizophrenics, R.D. Laing, and say, well, he gets sucked into their reality. He'd have to get pulled out because he's so far. And there are people who are a little schizophrenic, who are, and you can tell if they're having delusions of grandeur, you know, like, oh, I'm the only one. And those are the people that you have. But people having experience that say, no, I was aboard this UFO and this happened to me. Well, most people don't want to admit that, and I don't think that's delusional. It's an experience that they have yet to understand. So I think meeting people like John Mack, who was a huge visionary, very well versed in psychology, but also started to be open to what's possible for these people as inexplicable experiences. And accepting inexplicable experiences was another influence that I admired. Meeting Bud Hopkins, who, after I had my own abduction experience, I met him and he said, yeah, that sounds like what other people are experiencing. So there's been great thinkers out there and great innovators of what is this human experience. And those are people that really excite me still. Zinka Caro, another one, a great artist, great passion, so excited about spoon bending and so full of energy that people bend spoons in her presence. That's like one of my favorite people who can do that. So there's always someone with a new idea that I'm looking at and saying, how do we bring this out into a bigger picture of the possible? Innovative artists and everything is open. It's all an art form, really, about how do we expand experience. And, people need to have expanded experience because it's not about what's on television or your computer. It's like grounded, embodied, personal reality. How do you experience just going out in nature? Talk to a tree. And you know what? That tree will talk back to you. If you get quiet enough. This is what the Native Americans would do. They'd sing to the plant, and the plant would tell them what they were good to use for the human body. That's good for headaches. That's good for this, And the plant would, if you're receptive, this is a real shamanic way of thinking, because a shaman, in my definition, has a two-way conversation with nature. It's not just what I think, it's what are you receiving, which goes back to that right brain awareness. What are you receiving from the world that the world is telling you about plants and minerals? That's how it's all been discovered originally. They didn't have laboratories. They said that, they took something into their body, they talked to the plant, and, they got in touch with this connection to nature. People looking at the stars. Well, why are people aquarium? Because somehow they were so sensitive back then. There wasn't any television. They were able to feel the vibrational shift from one sign to another. Of course, the whole science of astrology was created, or numerology, or palmistry, or all these esoteric sciences are based in the sensitivities that humans still have the capacity for if they just get away from their digital phone, which is telling you everything that they want to tell you. It is hard you have to wander around a lot and kind of go into what a dark night of the soul, people call it, where you don't know what you're here to do. You don't know what your passion is, because all these things are being thrown at you, and you have to just allow yourself to stop. I sort of did. I regret not studying filmmaking. I took a little film, but yeah, I made some films, but I think filmmaking is like something I'm really excited about. But you have to just stop and find out what is your highest excitement, to quote Bashar. What is, and it could just be traveling, it could be sitting at a cafe, it could be drawing. It's like, if you can trust, and this is what Bashar says, if you can trust what it is that's exciting you the most about this experience on planet Earth, and you follow that and trust it, you are fulfilling your destiny. You really are. So if you don't know what you're here to do, drop in and find out what excites you, and don't worry about the money. Money comes and it goes, and it's like water in your hand. Sometimes you have a lot, sometimes you don't, but your excitement, look at Bob Dylan, right? Just came out from Minnesota to New York City, had some great songs, had not such a great singing voice, but he's one of the most well-known composers, artists of our time, because he just did what he wanted to do. And those are the people. Creativity is rewarded, I think. It really is. If you're unique enough I mean, sometimes it's not understood at first, but the uniqueness of your individual flavor into the kind of, porridge of humanity will stand out and say, oh, okay, so you're unique. Everyone out there is unique. Everyone out there is unique, and they have a certain destiny to actualize that uniqueness with their own creative passion, and that changes the world. Well, I don't know what effect I have on other people, but I am excited about everything I see, and everything, there's so much to learn here on planet Earth. There's so much to learn from each other. There's so much, so many books, so many movies, and they're all trying to tell us something. Like there's more to feel for the human being. So I think if people are not excited, then there's some older issues in their lives, some psychological barriers or something, trauma. People who've experienced trauma are disconnected from their true self. So I recommend soul retrieval, where you go back to the moment that you had this split. Sandra Ingerman talks about this. A lot of shamanic traditions talk about it. And you integrate that part that was split off in some kind of traumatic way, and you integrate it back into yourself, so you become a whole being that's capable of pursuing your passion. And if you're split for some reason, it's hard to stay in focus, because not all of you is present. Some of you is living in the past, because when you're traumatized, a part of you remains in the past at that moment of trauma, and you have to call that part home through recapitulation or soul integration or journeying or RSS. There's a part of us, and we all have pieces, but when enough of that is stuck in the past, it's hard to move forward. So you have to, that's the first part. If you can recapitulate yourself and bring yourself into some closer semblance of wholeness, then you start to drop in. If you just don't know what you want to do, and you're confused, and you're, even doing drugs is a distraction, because, when Bashar says follow your highest excitement, it's not about doing drugs, which splits your consciousness off. I mean, sometimes people need that if they're so stuck, but most of the time they're stuck because they've been traumatized out of their own original self. When you tap back in somehow to those moments in your life and pull it back home, then you're filled up with something that gives you the drive to pursue your unique individual ideas, passion, skills, excitement, whatever you want to call it, but it's something for you, whatever that is. And I had to do that too, my mother was a little crazy, and, there was a lot of stuff that were not fun. And, I remember I was obsessed with science fiction, and my 6th grade teacher said, you can't read any more science fiction. And it's like, that was a trauma. It's like, what do you mean? I'm learning so much, like parallel realities and all that. And he was just, some dogmatic person who thought they were doing the right thing, and they weren't, because they weren't listening to what someone who was passionate about something was doing. So, I think if you can work through whatever's in the way, then we can all be excited, because, right, there's so much here to be excited about. And it's changing, and we're reaching, I think, a very crucial point in human history where maybe, perhaps, it all comes out. Maybe this is the end of wars, perhaps. We've been doing the same thing for thousands of years. Religion, dogma, ownership, capitalism, all those things, corporate greed. I mean, it's all whatever it is, but I think it's time for a change. One of my favorite quotes is from H.G. Wells. You know who he was? He wrote The War of the Worlds, the first. But as he evolved, like through the 1920s and 30s, he predicted that everyone would be able to sit in their home at their leisure to look at a projector and examine any book and any document in exact replica. He had this remote viewing of the future there. He didn't know how that would happen, But another thing he said, I think around 1938, he says, someday people will pick up an old newspaper or article somewhere and think, was there ever such a world? Where there was violence and, all this awful stuff that's still happening, was there ever such a world? This is what the future, I hope, maybe not too far into the future, will say about, the horrors of the 20th century and what's coming to the 21st century. And, the history of human civilization has been marked by incredible achievements and awful destruction. So it's like, you have the Taj Mahal and the atom bomb, it's like that. You have Leonardo da Vinci and Hitler, these polarities of, and so I think if we come into balance somehow, where we're all creative geniuses, and I know that's possible because we all have access to the infinite unknown, we just have to allow it through this particular filter, then that will be the world that will be what it's supposed to have been when we incarnated here. It is supposed to be a world full of abundance, enough food, the promotion of your own creative individuality. That's like level playing field for how incarnation is supposed to be. And that's what I call when that can happen, I call that the flowering of humanity. When everyone's here to do their own creative passion and add to the collective process of making known the unknown, where art is the currency of the day, then we wake up to the ongoing creation of new realities where people are just amazed at the next song or music or this. And people are now, but they're also then, but if everyone was that way, adding to the potential that exists, then that will be a real flowering of the new humanity. I think everyone has a special individualized destiny, and we're here to find what that is. And destiny is different than fate. Fate is the hand you're dealt. Destiny is what you do with it. So you have a destiny which can change what you think is your fate, So destiny is how you're going to put your most excited passion to be the best person possible. It's Joe Dispenza. How do you tap into the quantum field to be your most highly developed self? To create the timeline that will give you and everyone else the most joy.
Are you looking to begin your life of passion and purpose? We are waiting for you with our groups of 8 to 12. These loving teams are formed to look over our success data to find the fastest and funnest and most direct way for you to find your purpose and calling in life. To find out more, go to holomovement.net/purpose.